Great. Hello, my name is Caleb Weinstein. I am the Senior Vice President and General Manager for Distribution for Discovery Networks, EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Just to give you a sense of that business, we offer about 85 products or 85 separate channels across the EMEA region. You know, we work with over 1,700 cable operators. We operate about, I think in Europe, we operate about 9 brands. Obviously, our core brands are Discovery Channel, Animal Planet, Real Time here in the UK are what we really operate as TLC outside the rest of Europe. And we have about kind of 7 other kind of digital net complementary brands. We, of course, here in the UK also operate Quest in the DTT environment. As well as have DTT channels, DMAX in Germany, and Real Time in Italy, and Discovery Max in Spain. So we have a presentation to share with you today. We'll probably take about 30 minutes. But before we dive in, I just really wanted to share with you why we did this work at Discovery, because it was a considerable investment by us, and we really felt it was very relevant to where TV, not just TV, but pay TV in particular, is going. And you know, we are here today at Discovery because of changes in technology, because you know, pay TV or cable and satellite provided an alternative to broadcast television in the United States when Discovery was launched in 1985, and enabled us to deliver, you know, thematic content such as factual or factual entertainment to viewers for what they weren't getting from the major broadcast nets in the U.S. So moving from an environment of 3 or 4 channels to 600, you know, was really driven by TV. And I think storytelling is always core to everything we do, but other technology changes have also helped us drive storytelling. Probably the biggest and the best for Discovery was the launch of Discovery Universal Theater in the United States, which in 2002 was the first 24/7 HD, all HD channel. And you look at an advent of some technology such as high definition, and that really empowered and enabled our storytelling ability. You know, shows like Deadliest Catch, or Man vs. Wild with Bear Grylls really come to life in an HD environment very powerfully, in the same way that probably sports content does, and probably much more powerfully than animation. You know, HD animation, which is something I've done in my past life, doesn't look much different than SD, but when you bring HD to the environments and the places that we go, it really makes the story more powerful. So, you know, with that in mind, and for these reasons, we engaged the Future Foundation to really help us look at the new trends. And these new trends really break down to what we identified as 3 buckets. The second screen, you know, everyone talks about lean back. I often say to people, you're leaning back with something in your lap right now. On-demand viewing, nonlinear video on demand. That has kind of sparked a whole new way of viewing, and probably the biggest buzzword these days is binge viewing. And then the third is social networks. And whether you're talking about Twitter, Facebook, Zbox, how are social networks impacting the way that we view television? And so those were the 3 main buckets of questions that we engaged Future Foundation to take a look at about 10 markets and help us answer. We specifically and explicitly chose not to focus on Western Europe. We wanted to focus on many of the emerging or developing and you know, frankly, some markets that have much higher pay TV penetration than Western Europe, but kind of the still emerging platforms and businesses of Central Eastern Europe, the Middle East and Africa, explicitly because these are markets where broadband has been growing just as fast as pay TV. So it's not like you have a market that has been dominated by pay TV, and pay TV's been there, and now you're getting into the broadband game. It's more like broadband and pay TV have developed together in several of these markets, Bulgaria and Romania probably being the 2 best examples, where broadband penetration probably exceeds pay TV, which is still 60 to 70%. So we explicitly went after these markets to see what's coming around the corner and what are people doing in fresh environments versus the U.S. and the U.K. There is a lot of research on these topics in the U.K. and the U.S. and we kind of referred back to them, but we really did a bunch of market studies and really talked to trendsetters, market leaders such as yourselves to see what they thought was coming around the corner. And so let me jump into that. And let me kind of just give you the highlights of those three buckets. And then I'll hopefully lay out some evidence that will lead you to those highlights as well. So I think the number one thing we found about multi-screen viewing, or viewing on the PC, the tablet, was TV, and the TV set is still very prominent in people's lives. People still watch TV on the main TV in the living room. And that still dominates all of our TV viewing. TV viewing is still increasing, but these new tablets are emerging, and they tend to emerge in very, very funny places. Obviously, the second bedroom in bed is probably the biggest place that people say they watch TV or online viewing in an alternate space. The bathroom, frankly, comes up a lot. And past studies, the crib or the car also comes up, which is a little scary. But I think these devices are empowering viewing in new places. But that said, people are still doing the majority of their TV viewing at the TV set in the traditional living room spot. But what is coming out with these new devices and with not turning a dial or going down an EPG, their new viewer habits or typologies, as Future Foundation called them, emerging. So first, there's the tourist. There's somebody that watches a lot of different TV, and they've been empowered by the PC or the tablet to go after and find that viewing. And the second is the enthusiast. There's somebody who not only wants to see the show on their TV set, and let's American Idol or Homeland or some big show that they love, they want to go deep into that experience. And so while they're watching that show on the TV set, they're using their PC or tablet in their lap, and they're going and they're getting the behind-the-scenes clips. And so that is a new, I would say that's a new habit that even in these emerging markets is becoming familiar and kind of popping up, that we as content creators are starting to think about. And one of the best examples, I think, of tablet multi-screen viewing is the Formula One or Major League Baseball apps. And for those of you who haven't seen them, these are two sports that are driven by stats and driven by statistics, particularly Major League Baseball. So you have all the statistics in your lap while you're watching the experience live on the big screen. And we as content creators are trying to figure out how we bring that experience to a show on Discovery. And do you have that in-depth background on what is the history behind the pyramids we might be covering, or fishing in Alaska, or any of the amazing places that we go. And that's something we're trying to figure out. So those were I would say the two biggest highlights on multi-screen viewing. The second one, for what we refer to, or the Future Foundation refers to, is time maximizing, is that people, particularly in these 10 markets, still watch the majority of their programming in time, in linear. They are not watching in an on-demand fashion as much as we do here in the UK or in the US. And that probably is partially due to, I think the UK is a unique market with the promotion of iPlayer. You have a big, the premier television platform for the last 5 years or 5 years has been promoting a new type of viewing. We haven't seen that type of promotion really drive consumers. While words like Netflix or Love Film or IPLA in Poland or Now.ru in Russia are becoming more and more common and people understand what these platforms are, still the majority of what people do is they watch in the main TV set and they watch in time. That said, they do like having that what we call off-schedule ability. And that off-schedule ability, gives them more choice. And what we're finding is that they're being overwhelmed by that choice. And I think if anybody has ever looked at the on-demand section of any EPG, of any operator, or of Netflix, or of Love Film, how do you navigate? How do you, in particular, find the shows you want? Is it about the shows? Is it about the brands? Is it about finding catch-up, something that's been on air in the last week? Or is it about binge viewing an entire box set series, and consumers are overwhelmed by that, and they don't know how to navigate that. And that's something we at Discovery are trying to drive into and really find what are the root causes of that and what are the potential solutions. They're looking for that guidance, whether it's from friends or experts. They're looking for somebody to tell them what to watch. And frankly, in the linear model, that's what we've done for 50 years now. It's what's coming up next. Everyone uses a hit major show to lead into the new show that they're launching in their television grid. How do we replicate that in the on-demand world? One of the best examples I'll tell you is that Telenet in Belgium, on their VOD platform called Yellow, when you finish watching a VOD show, 3 boxes come up with 3 more choices. And those 3 choices have nothing to do with the show that you just watched. They are just the highest 3 VOD assets being run on the platform at the time. But frankly, in the 2,000 operators that I work with and the about 60 that have VOD with us at Discovery, nobody else has driven that promotion in the on-demand world. And that's something that we saw in this research is really coming out as people looking for guidance. And then with respect to social TV, despite all your friends knowing what you're doing every day, every minute between Twitter, Facebook, people really still looked for the experts and recommendations and reviews. And it's become more a combination of your friends say they're watching Homeland or House of Cards or Gold Rush on Discovery. People still, before they want to make that investment, particularly whether it's in the on-demand world or the linear world, they still go to reviews and recommendations. So those are really kind of 6 or 7 real highlights of what this work did. I'm now going to kind of walk you through the research, and hopefully this will take about 30 minutes, and then open to any questions. So fortunately, I'm going back and forth between the computer. I think we can cover that. So just a little bit about Discovery. We were founded in 1985 by Jonathan Hendricks with a mission really to satisfy curiosity and really make a difference in people's lives by providing high-quality factual entertainment. Nonfiction is what we do. We don't produce 1 hour of fiction television. We've actually have our first project coming up in 2013, but it's all based on historical events. But we really focus on capturing the world we live in and presenting that to people so that, as I like to say, they can see the pyramids in Egypt, Antarctica, Siberia, the ends of the world without leaving their living room. I would say that while content is really still at the core of what we do every day, our history is founded really on the pay TV industry. The backers of this business in 1985 were Jonathan Malone, from at the time that was TCI, obviously now UPC today, and now Virgin Media, or very shortly Virgin Media, as well as the Cox family, which is one of the 7th largest cable operator in the United States, and the Newhouse family of Condé Nast, who are about the 5th largest cable operator in the United States. And what these people saw is that in order to roll out new technologies, you needed great content. Technology just in itself won't drive new consumer habits. You need the content and the experience to complement that. Okay, so let's dive into the facts. We certainly have seen a new appetite, for increasing the technology in the viewer experience. And although the extent of how great that is and how great the trends will be is really still unknown, we believe they will complement traditional linear viewing more than they ever have and will continue to do so. I'm looking out in that audience now. I see at least 5 iPads. We all know there have been over 11 million sold. The numbers for people who have paid TV and who have iPads tend to match, and they're growing. And we see that people are using these devices while they're consuming TV. They're doing, as they've always done, 2 things at once. And so to make sense of this changing and brave new world, we commissioned a consumer trends and research specialist, the Future Foundation, to explore how television may look into the future. And the results of this is on the slide is basically the rise of the TV everywhere audience. And, then that's a report that explores how TV is adapting, evolving, and growing to accommodate entirely new viewing types. and in this increasingly well-connected, time-precious, and fragmented world. It presents our findings from original quantitative research from 5,000 TV viewers in 10 markets and a panel of 10 TV and advertising executives from across the region. And just to give you the markets that we went after, it was Romania, Russia, Turkey, Ukraine, South Africa, and the UAE, and then back to Central Europe with Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland. And as I said before, we explicitly chose these markets because we didn't want to do the mature markets, or the bigger, and I would say, yes, more mature economically markets of Western Europe, even though some of these markets have higher pay TV penetration than the UK, Italy, France, and Spain, just to name a few. So as I say, multi-screen viewing, what I call lean back with something in your lap. Okay. So as I already said, it's important to remember that the traditional TV set retains its prominent place in the home, and linear TV viewing continues to rise across all the markets we looked at. But the real key here is that in addition to this, the Future Foundation found that live online TV viewing on any device, so that's PC, tablet, phone, other than the main TV set, is now commonplace in 8 of the 10 markets that we looked at. About 52% of people in these markets have watched live television through an online device in the last 6 months. So these words and these platforms are becoming commonplace. And while most people remain wedded to the TV schedule, many of today's young adults like the freedom to watch what they want, where they want, and how they want it. And as a result, this is driving use of on-demand. As comparison, in the UK, about 42% of all adults have watched TV online versus the 52% of the markets that we surveyed. We talk about this, and we saw this in the respondents' viewing. It's that everyone says kids are never going to watch linear viewing. Well, what we find is that where more people are encountering on demand for the first time is with their children. And kids viewing and kids television is a tremendous driver of on demand for adults. It's the first way they're finding the platform, and then once they find it, they continue to expand their usage of it. So this quote from David Brennan, who is really a research expert, I think sums it up, altogether. That, TV viewing continues to rise in general, but the second screen is being used to complement the first screen in a very effective way. And I would say that the Middle East, not surprisingly, leads this curve, with around a third of tablet owners in Turkey having watched live TV on their tablets against the EMEA average of 25%. Similarly, 28% of tablet owners in the UK have used their tablet device to watch TV on demand, and 20% have used their device to watch live TV. Then if we look at smartphones, in Turkey, 21% of the people have watched live TV on their mobile device, and 15% have used it to watch TV on demand. So there are platforms and markets that are promoting these usage across the region in a variety of ways, but what's becoming clear, frankly, is that everyone's doing it. Okay. So media meshing, what's commonly referred to as having, as I say, having something in your lap while you're leaning back, can improve the TV experience, according to the 5,000 people that we sampled. Already in EMEA, about 2/3, 68% of audiences look up information on the internet about the program they're watching while they're watching it. And over half in each country, of each of the 10 countries we surveyed, about 58%, looked up a channel while they were watching that channel. And that compares to 38% in the UK who have looked up information on something they're watching while on TV. So what we are seeing is that people in these emerging markets are adopting these technologies faster than they have in the more mature markets. And we spent a lot of time trying to understand why. What could be the root of that? I think part of it is one hypothesis we had, and this is just a hypothesis, is that the media outlets in the UK are so big and so established versus the media outlets that are emerging in the Eastern markets. So there are more people watching probably more channels in the emerging markets than there are, here in the UK. Not to say that there aren't 600 channels in the UK, but I think people look for many more influences in the Eastern markets than they have in the UK. And that's just, why would they be doing it more, is that they have a thirst and an interest in understanding what's there. Or it could also be, frankly, someplace like Romania, broadband penetration is much, much higher and faster than it is here in the UK. So you get a response back on your tablet, frankly, faster than you would here in the UK if you're on an ADSL 10 megabit line from Sky or BT. So there are a variety of reasons this could be, but what we're seeing is that definitely the trends in the EMEA markets are higher than they are in the UK. Over a third of people engage more socially and talk about the programs they're watching online via social networks such as Facebook and Twitter. And this stat rises the younger you get and the more early adapters you get of technology. So we in the 5,000 people that we tracked, about 34% were using Twitter and Facebook and talking about the shows while they were watching them. And I think it's all, what we did see across all of this is, as I said, it's really driven by the type of content. You know, if you're watching sports and you want to look up stats, you will do that on the tablet. If you are watching a factual show and you want to know more about the country it's showcasing, you'll do that in a tablet or a PC versus, watching a drama. It really depends on the type of content people are watching, the genre of content people are watching based on these results. Okay. So as a result of greater access to content via the second screen, these viewers have developed new typologies. What this word that Future Foundation talks about is the way we watch television. How do we find and how are we influenced by the content that we consume? And so the first, as I called, was the tourist. Somebody who's watching a lot across a lot of different platforms and being empowered to get access to that through these new technologies. And the second is the enthusiast, the person who's taking a really deep dive into that show or that content that they love and that they're watching, and they want to see everything on that show. What we've seen is that most of the respondents said that with the new technology, they're certainly watching more TV and a greater variety of TV, that the tablets and the PCs are empowering their ability to find content in a lot of different places. I think if you think about it, the EPG or the channel listings on a PC or some of the apps that are out there today have quickly replaced the traditional magazine that many of these markets you used to get from your cable operator of the monthly listings. If you can search the EPG, or some systems you can't search the EPG, but if you can search the program guide on your tablet and PC, people are using that, and they're using that to find more content quicker and better and more often than they ever did before. And I think the viewers tend to also be both tourists and enthusiasts, which is a really, really challenging thing for somebody like us at Discovery, because there is no, for example, with respect to on-demand, there is no one answer. Should we make lots of little shorts about big shows, or should we put up, an entire set of shows? Should we do box sets of different shows around similar themes to give people a wide experience of different types of programming we have in our library? Or do we go and make intensive extra content about a particular show? There's no one answer out there, is what we've seen from this research, and it's consumers are basically been empowered to find more of that quote unquote long tail content, and that's certainly what they're doing. So let's talk about on demand. I think on demand is, I would say, in the last 3 years has gone from, for us at least at Discovery, being something we had with maybe 10 operators across Europe to we're over 50 operators today. We expect that number to double by the end of 2013. On demand is not just the world of the internet with people like Netflix or the iPlayer or Love Film. On demand is becoming a very, very commonplace in the TV landscape as well, with things like YouView and all of the operators focused on that. And what's becoming even more and more interesting at this point is that on-demand viewing or VOD viewing wasn't rated 3 years ago. If you wanted to know, you could get ratings off of a PVR device, but you couldn't find ratings for on-demand shows. And that really conflicted somebody like ourselves. How do you promote content in the on-demand world if it's going to cannibalize your linear channel ratings, which is how we're evaluated, how we evaluate our shows? How do we promote that? what we're now seeing is that people like Barb are now starting to rate on demand. As long as the show is the show that ran on the linear channel, they will group that on-demand asset versus the linear asset together. And that's a big step forward in the industry. And then we're hoping it's going to provide us a lot more guidance as we go forward. And it's going to also, I think, really open up the broadcasters and the programmers to think about on-demand in a new way if the performance can be tracked and can be measured in the same way that linear viewing can. So with respect, so that's kind of the open of why we thought and asked the Future Foundation to dive into on-demand. And what we saw is that the vast majority in EMEA will watch, again, most of their television still in the linear environment. But as people become more and more time pressured, what we're finding out is that this on-demand viewing, or time maximizing as we call it, is becoming a more and more prevalent consumer behavior. And there is interest from consumers in these products that lets them take their content with them on the go, lets them watch it when they want and where they want. And I think the best example is that while you have the iPlayer and 4OD or 4 on demand and the 5 player here in the UK, those platforms and local versions of those platforms are emerging across the EMEA region. I think one of the most prominent examples is IPLA in Poland. You also have now.ru in Russia. You have Voyo across Central Europe, run by CME. These platforms are emerging. The consumers are getting exposed to them in new ways. HBO Go, probably across Central Europe, was one of the biggest drivers of awareness of this new platform. And we're seeing habits and interest in these specifically. So while the majority of TV viewers in EMEA continue to watch scheduled programming, there is a growing appetite to be able to watch TV content off schedule. As I said, anywhere, anytime, what best fits their lives. And what we found is that 72% of our respondents would prefer to watch TV when they want rather than watch the schedule as they're dictated to. And 61% in South Africa are interested in accessing TV content wherever they want, with 55% of respondents looking to take TV with them on the go in both Bulgaria and Ukraine. But even when viewers choose to watch television in downtime, whether it is at home or on the go, over half the viewers in 9 out of the 10 countries we surveyed say that they find it difficult to choose a program to watch. And that came out most in both the Czech Republic and Poland, that there were just so many, what we heard back was that there was so much content available that people didn't know where to go and they didn't know how to select it. So we think that's a real opportunity. We think guiding the viewer, promoting to the viewer, developing these platforms in a new way, and messaging to them that this is the type of usage this platform enables, we think is going to be key to the development of this industry. And we're confident that somebody like Discovery and the Discovery brand will be able to guide and empower people. And we think that while the long tail gets longer and longer, we do think that consumers are going to come back to the power of brands. So, as I said, the headline here is 66% of people are really interested in taking, a show to be automatically recorded. They want it with them. They want it everywhere. And that's something, that's 2/3 of viewers, and that's something that we're now trying to respond to and look about how we package our content and how we can deliver our content to viewers in that fashion. And again, David Brennan, I think, sums it up, much better than I, when he talks about, the second thing is this media snacking, where you grab 5 minutes here and there. I don't know about people in the audience, but personally these days, when I'm sitting there waiting for a plane, I will pull out my tablet and I'll start watching a show rather than answer email. We're seeing that trend expand across the viewers. People say they will watch 5 minutes at a time on these new devices, and they'll watch, because they're watching 5 minutes, they'll watch an extra hour of television a day, whether it's 5 minutes on the bus, 5 minutes on the train. Those 5 minutes are adding up, and we're seeing that happening, across these platforms, and particularly as people have the ability to access content on these platforms through primarily tablets or mobile devices. Okay, so let's talk about social. And I'll be honest with you. Social, you talk about social, and 20 years ago, everybody used to be social watching TV. Is that a bunch of people would sit around in the living room together and they would watch Thursday night television, or they would watch the latest music videos. So we're now looking at how these social platforms such as Facebook and Twitter are not only where they've been driving huge cultural shifts for us, how are those cultural shifts and how are those technologies, really evolving and developing the way that we watch TV. And what we found, or what we asked, excuse me, is what really influences you as a viewer. And this is something that we think is not only critical to telling the story, but it's also critical to promoting the story. So in the traditional TV landscape, we always found that your lead-in show was your highest and best performing marketing for that new show. If you wanted to introduce viewers and audiences to a new show, a new product, a new platform, you would always try to leverage your best performing show. So for example, Deadliest Catch for Discovery is the #1 show that we've typically led with to launch a new show onto this schedule. Whether it's, as I think we all talk about in the United States, the Super Bowl has always been a landmark event to launch a new show for a network. What we're finding is that social media can complement and can spread the word faster and farther than that type of linear scheduling. So we basically went out there and we said to people, what are you using to find new shows? And while online TV guides are valued more highly than printed TV guides, and online reviews more than reviews in newspapers and magazines, and so the opportunity for TV brands is to find a way to integrate these sources of influence into future TV services. So we saw that you can have the same article sitting in a newspaper, or you can have it online, but what the respondents were saying is that they go online for recommendations for their TV viewing. And they're finding those recommendations by topics that their friends are talking about through Twitter and Facebook. But they want that insight or direction to come from a friend or somebody they know, but they still need it to be validated by an online review or recommendation. And something we've looked at, or we kind of talked about and hypothesized, is can you develop a tool, what we call the social scheduler? Can we sit there and can you create, and many people are trying to do this, is can you, from your friends, basically create and aggregate in an effective way all the recommendations or likes that your friends are talking about for TV shows, and basically empower the consumer with a social scheduler. And it really would be based on recommendations and recommendation engines, and really trying to guide people much in the same way that these are the top selling shows or the most viewed shows on YouTube. This is what's hot. Can you develop an engine in a social scheduler that would do that from your friends in your community? And we thought, what would be the reach? And what we found was that 65% of the respondents had used a social networking site in the past 6 months, and 50% of them had shared something they had found online with others in their community. So, we know that these platforms are reaching people. The question now is how do we effectively use them to get people to shows, faster and better than we have before? And that's really the question for us that we're on the precipice of, that we're trying to figure out is how do we leverage these social tools? Because I think the question we asked was an obvious one, but the answer into how do we take that energy is something that we've been debating. So we looked at how do we integrate social media and online sharing into that scheduling, and that's from this social schedule that I talked about. And one thing we saw is this trend called performative media. And it's about what we call the growing phenomena, or what Future Foundation calls the growing phenomena of using smart and social technology to broadcast our media consumption to our friends and beyond. And what we found is that everybody likes to offer recommendations, but there isn't a tool out there that kind of captures those recommendations in a consolidated way. And although TV providing, I've always talked about that TV provides this continuous stream of kind of water cooler comments. There's nothing new out there that kind of brings that water cooler to the next level of technology. And we thought that was a really interesting trend that came out of the work. And we think that's really where the future is. And it's as I say, there are three things going on out there as I kind of look to the next slide about the last 60 years of television. As they come back to, where are people watching? Guess what? People are still watching in the living room. They're still watching TV with their family. But what's happening is they're doing something else while they're watching TV. What we saw to some extent is that some people, the family might all be watching TV in the living room together, but somebody might be watching a different show on their tablet than what's being watched on the main screen. Somebody else might be looking up facts about the show that they're watching. So the question that we at Discovery as content creators have been is how can we tell a complementary or an additive story to what's on that big screen through the tablet that's in your lap? I think the second thing is this on demand? On demand is becoming more and more prevalent in consumers' lives. They're recognizing it, but there's no clear answer what question on demand solves. And that means, come back to this concept, and I have this discussion with operators every day when they talk about on demand. Do they want catch-up content that's run in the last 7 days, or do they want, quote-unquote, what we call box set or archives? Can we create interesting complementary content that maybe doesn't integrate into our linear schedule, as well as kind of creating a special experience in the on-demand world? And a great example we did in November around the launch of the latest James Bond film, Skyfall, was all our on-demand platforms ran. It was Spy Month. So we have somebody like Discovery we have over 25,000 hours of content in our library. We went back into the library and we found 10 hours of really spy classic content, and we put that up in a fashion. Now, unfortunately, those shows one was 90 minutes, one was 30 minutes, one was an hour. Very hard thing to do in the linear environment of stitching together 10 shows that were frankly constructed with completely different storytelling arcs. But we found that we could offer them in an on-demand fashion as a box set and provide an enthusiast a lot more content. Or we also have offered and had some success with offering box sets of the last week or highlights from the last month to the tourist to kind of give the best content we have out there. And that alongside this question of social and how do we integrate your friends and your family's recommendations into a cohesive engine to tell you what to watch, we think are the two, really the three biggest questions that we as content creators are trying to answer. And I think what's interesting about today is that the last time we tried to answer this question was around 2D or 3D, and how do you tell a story for the high definition format in 2D or the high definition format in 3D. High definition shows are big, broad landscapes. Three-dimensional shows are all about movement, and that changes the storytelling. So it's how we look at technology and how we talk about technology changing that storytelling is kind of the precipice of where we are today, and those are the questions that we're really trying to answer. So just briefly, you saw the video when we started talking before. Hopefully, it's not going to play again. But just to go back, we at Discovery we have really taken the VOD thing on full steam. We think our content, frankly, performs better in the VOD world than anybody else's. We have as I said, we have a rich library of content, and we're trying to figure out how to best, quote unquote, program that content to be empowered on these platforms, and whether, and the research we're stitching together, because as I said, there's no single ratings platform, there's no single standard out there to give you a currency. What we're seeing is that people are watching different shows on their mobile tablets than they are on the set-top boxes. They're watching different shows at different times of day, different types of viewers. And we're trying to figure out how we can answer the demand that technology is creating. So if you want more of by far more of an in-depth answer to the questions I highlighted, we have these lovely printed books. I think we have a couple here today. John, who's standing over there, if we've run out of them, he can certainly get them to you. I encourage you all to take a much deeper dive and maybe a little quieter of an environment and take a look at this. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and thank you for your time. Great.